at one point I decided to try and write a computer game because smartphones had just started becoming popular, because this is way back, many years ago. And so I thought, well, it's not going to take much to create a computer game, because with the screen size you're not going to have too many graphics and processing power is okay. So I looked back, and with Quake 2, that was a game quite a long time ago, and that was for computers that weren't that powerful because it was quite a long time ago. So the same technology should be able to be used in an iPhone. And the technology had been ported to the iPhone, so that was doable, and it was for free. And then I looked at what other software, and there was Blender, which is a 3D modeling tool, and you can write Python scripts for Blender. And so to create a wall, you want a door, so I wrote a tool where you'd say where a wall is, where a door is, the shape of the door. And a wall isn't just a flat thing, it's 3 dimensions with all these other shapes, and so my tool would then create these models. And so the idea is if I create a text file listing out there's a wall there and there's a door there and a window there and the floors and the ceiling, then my software could then create the 3D model and all of the axes and everything, and that would be okay. And I wrote other tools. For example, when you have a human being, there is a tool already existing called Make Human, so it creates the skin of a human. But the skin isn't good enough, because what you need is you need to import it into Blender, you add a skeleton, then as you move the skeleton, that moves the skin. Now, that sounds easy enough to attach the skin to the skeleton, but you have a problem with elbows and joints, because if you say that the wrist is on the wrist bone and the upper arm is on the upper arm bone, then with all the joints, which point is that? And you have to weight it. Now, you do get weighting in Blender, where you can weight how much a bone is on one, how much weighting skin is on one bone to another bone, but you want it all the weighting to always add up to 100%, because if you weight it 70% on one and 60% on another, as you bend the elbow, that bit of skin just flies off. So you have to be very careful with all the weighting and do it in an even way. So I wrote Python scripts to do weighting in a very even way. And so I wrote all these different Python scripts that tackled different issues to do with that. I also wrote the game part, which would, well, just the beginning part, where I used it's IRICT or whatever, it's IRR and then the word lights in German, and that's the name of the engine that's in Quake 2. And I wrote a C++ game where it was just the very beginning, where I had that as part of it, and then it would take the model that's being exported out of Blender, and it would then be able to move and basically a computer game model is a bit like a cartoon strip, where you have a few frames which is walking, next few frames is jumping, next few frames is kicking. As you're playing the game, you say, well, I'm walking now, so you keep looping through the walking frames. You press a button to jump, and you go from the walking frames, you go to the jumping frames, and you do the jumping frames. Then you go back to the walking frames or the falling over frames. And so in Blender, when you are playing with a model, you're actually creating this cartoon strip of frames, and so the C++ application that was running is playing these frames, positioning the camera, then when something happens like a button press, it'd go from one set of frames to another set of frames. And so I just created that game part and wrote all of that C++ for the game part, and with moving cameras around, moving the character around, and so on and so forth. And so there was all these different bits of computer programming, but then there's a lot of design work, and the design work's very difficult, and it kept going and going. I spent quite a few months doing all of these computer programming and design work, and I decided in the end it would take about 20 years to finish an entire game, and it was just, I could see just how much work it was, even for the simplest thing on an iPhone phone. It's just huge amounts of work. So then I got a phone call saying, "Do you want to have a job here?" And just yeah, I started that job and gave up the game. So it was good fun, and I learned a lot about computer games and games programming, and it's very interesting. I really enjoy computer programming, so I had a good time.